Hi, this is Melanie for Pardesi Reviews, and I have a special guest today. My husband Mark came with me to see Saaho. So we're going to do a film review of the Prabhas film Saaho that we saw in IMAX. If you're new to Pardesi Reviews, I do trailer reactions and film reviews of Telugu, Tamil, Hindi, and Malayalam cinema. So, this has been a day that I have been waiting for 2 years and 4 months, ever since we saw the promo of Saaho that was attached to Baahubali 2. The only Indian films that the only one that you ever seen in a theater before today was Baahubali 2.
That's correct. I did see Baahubali 1, but not in the theater.
Right. We saw Baahubali 1 at home. Correct. So, in essence, you've only seen Prabhas films, other than walking in and out of me seeing a Shah Rukh Khan film or something else. I mean, he's familiar enough with Shah Rukh Khan where he's like, wow, he's really young in that one, or whatever. So, but the only ones that he sat through from beginning to end before today were the Baahubali films. And I was taking a risk. This was a big film. I was super excited. I wanted to go. And so I bought tickets for IMAX, which was the very first showing here in Chicago. So the tickets were $30, which I wasn't going to tell Mark how much. And then in the middle of it, he's like, how much did you spend on this? How much are these tickets?
You're making that sound very negative.
Well, actually, you asked me before, because he was like, there's not that many people here. Although people came in late, because the showtime here was 4:30, so it was before people would have to have left work early.
Right, and it's a weekday.
And it's a weekday. It's not a Friday night. Right. So I went in. I love Prabhas. I have seen at least a dozen of his films. I'm a huge fan. I wanted this to be great. The trailers were super exciting. I showed Mark the trailer. I described it as, this is going to be action on the level of a Fast and Furious, of a what? I mean, they hired the stunt team from the Transformers. Like, I was just, he hasn't watched enough films to know the level of action that usually is in an Indian film. The budgets are not the same as Hollywood. A regular Telugu film, the action scene is a bunch of toughs attacking the hero. He grabs a pipe from the ground, leaves flutter in the sky as he dispatches them one by one, which is fine, but this was trying to take it to a completely another level. And in isolation, each action sequence, I think, did reach Hollywood level.
Yeah, there were a lot of action sequences, and they were, I thought, well choreographed and interesting. The special effects were generally pretty good. I saw some glitchiness in a couple of things, but overall, I felt like the special effects it was supposed to, parts of it were set. I wasn't sure if it was supposed to be in the future or like a made up city where some of the stuff was taking place. I'm not sure. Certainly not far future. I mean,
near future.
Yeah, at most, and I certainly could have been present day.
So, I mean, on the good side, I would say Prabhas continues to have incredible screen presence. He's really good in the action sequences. He totally sells every scene that he's in. He could romance a rock, as far as I'm concerned, but I don't know that he had the greatest chemistry with Shraddha Kapoor. Her character was not, we discussed this on the way home, her character was not extremely well written or fleshed out enough for us to really know her. Sometimes she was badass, sometimes she was wishy-washy, sometimes it just was not consistent.
In a 3-hour movie, when she is arguably the second most important character in the movie, you'd expect to see more character development. There were a couple of things they attempted to do to bring out her personality, but it did seem as if she was inconsistently written.
Yeah.
And there were a couple of efforts to build some depth, and it just didn't seem to really resonate with the way she was really playing the character.
To clarify, this is going to be spoiler free. We are going to attempt to discuss the film without having any spoilers at all, but we will just discuss things in a general sense.
We have mentioned that there's action in it, so
yeah, there's action.
They'll know that.
There's action.
There's a lot of action sequence. He gets into fights. Is that a spoiler?
He does get into some fights.
It's probably not a spoiler to say that he gets into fights.
So there's this film, and I mentioned this in my trailer reaction, is that the second trailer came out and it showed all the villains and just moments. And so you could see they brought in actors of all different regional cinemas. You wouldn't know that, but I recognize, for instance, Lal, who is known in Malayalam cinema. You have Jackie Shroff, who's a big name in Hindi cinema. Well, so is Shraddha Kapoor. But I'm just saying, you had Murli Sharma from, he plays in Telugu, Tamil, and Hindi cinema. You had Arun Vijay, who I last saw in a Mani Ratnam film and a Tamil film. So you had all of these different people. And the director of this film is Sujeeth. He's only had one other film, Run, Roger, Run, which I have not seen. But I felt like this, Prabhas handed him the keys to the kingdom. Whatever movie Prabhas was going to do next was going to be big, was going to draw crowds because he made such a name for himself in the Baahubali films. And, people were willing to spend $30 on this film. For IMAX, they were, huge crowds everywhere for this opening day. And I felt like it didn't live up to all of the hype because the screenplay, so he wrote the screenplay and he directed the film, and it was so complicated. In the opening minutes, there's all of this exposition explaining, and I'm like, oh boy. Because it was confusing just from the explaining, from the first 10 minutes of trying to set us up into the world of rival gangs or whatever that we're being thrown into. And you kept turning to me and you kept saying,
I have no idea what's going on right now.
He said that multiple times in the movie. It wasn't just at the beginning and then it became clear, because sometimes you get into a film and they kind of drop you in and you figure it out as you go. It kept being complicated. Yeah, it kept being confusing.
Instead of being one truth, and again, I don't think this is a spoiler, but there's a lot of reveals and twists.
Right, a lot of twists.
And so it became very hard to actually figure out, well, is this the reveal from the prior twist, or is this the continuation before the twist that they were... because not everybody knew that the twist had occurred, although the viewer did. So it became very hard to follow. And it's a very large cast, and that also makes it very challenging to remember who is with who, who's on which side. And then you've got people who you think are on one side, and in fact they're actually on another side. Or maybe they're not on another side. Maybe they are on their first side.
It was so confusing. And I even found myself in action sequences. A masterful director, even though you're changing scenery and you're following it, you the viewer are following it, and you know where you are spatially, whatever. And I just felt like individual moments were great, but I kept getting lost. I kept kind of losing the thread of why are we here? Why is this happening? Why are these people attacking him? Like, it just didn't all hold together when you come away from it and you think about it. And I thought, well, is it just me? The subtitles were not great. I mean, there was a lot of grammatical English errors. I still could tell what was happening. It's the confusion is not a fault of the subtitles being so bad that I couldn't gather what was happening. But for this level of a film, I was really surprised that the subtitles had not been checked by a better English speaker for word choices were weird, and I don't know. I mean, there was one big song, and he says, "I am your eye feast." I don't know, like, that was just kind of an awkward turn of phrase in English.
Right.
There was just other things. He was like, it was like, "I am tempting." Like, it should have been sort of like, I am tempted, or it was just like some awkward phrases in English. Sort of like maybe you literally translated something from the Telugu,
you could figure out what was intended,
right?
But it wasn't a natural English idiom.
Yeah, not at all.
That was translated into.
Not at all. So the performances, again, I thought Prabhas was fine. Shraddha, I suppose she did the best she could with what she was given, but I just didn't feel like she had necessarily the sizzling chemistry that Prabhas has had with other actresses like Anushka Shetty and Tamanna in the Baahubali films, or even Kajol and other people going back to, you know, his earlier romantic films in Telugu cinema, Darling and other ones. So, I mean, I know he can do that, and he was trying his hardest. It just wasn't there for me, and that's an element that's important to me. I was pleased. He had a interview Prabhas did with Bharadwaj Rangan from a Film Companion, and who asked him, what kind of film do you want to do next? And he said, I want to do a romantic film. So I'm excited about that. If he's wanting to do something on a smaller scale, something that doesn't take 2 years to complete, and I'm going to be looking forward to that. Just like get down to normal level film, and not trying to have like the hugest blockbuster every single time.
Right.
The villains, there's a lot of different actors that were villains. There was one guy, Jackie Shroff is not in it a lot, but he plays a very important character, and there's a lot of some flashback scenes with him, but he's not in the film as much as I was expecting. There's one villain played by Chunky Pandey, who was maybe the most menacing, but among this den of thieves, like it was like who was more evil than somebody else.
And it also wasn't always clear whether somebody really was a villain or were they playing a villain. How are you supposed to take their who are they? And it was sometimes very difficult to tell because it kept changing, and you think, oh well, obviously now they're on this side, so that must be the good side, but maybe it's not.
Well, and when you get to the end, you want to feel really satisfied that a certain person gets their comeuppance and finally is defeated. I don't know, because it was so confusing, because it was so diluted by having so many villains, I don't know if we really had that impactful connection of like, oh yeah, you know, like, wow, that finally we've been waiting for that.
Yeah,
I didn't really have that.
In a sense, normally you've got the protagonist and the antagonist, and you know who those are. There's some unclarity at times as to who the protagonist really is.
Yeah.
And there's unclarity as to who the real antagonist is. And so at the end, when the real antagonist, you know, should be getting their just desserts, it just doesn't feel as satisfying because you haven't been sort of spending the whole time hating that character and waiting for something to happen. It just seemed as if it was not built up.
Right. I didn't necessarily have that emotional kind of a moment. I on the flip side, I would say the action scenes I did feel were world class. Mm-hmm. Like the money that they spent there, they brought in the team that did Transformers. I saw in an interview with Prabhas, he said those trucks that are flipping up in the air are not CGI. That's real. The explosions being under them, and he said it was kind of scary because he was riding a motorcycle and then these big explosions were happening behind him of these trucks flying and everything. So that paid off and is worth your money to go to the theater to see. It's not going to have the same impact to see that on a small screen.
If you're going to see it, seeing it on the IMAX, it's a big action movie, and the action scenes I thought were generally very, very good. I mean, in a sense, it almost seemed as if it was a series of action scenes with some effort to put some plot to stitch them together, and that I think may have been part of the.
And I mean, there's so many individual moments that were great. There's one woman character who becomes badass in the second half, and you weren't expecting it. She coolly kills someone with a gun, and then she sort of kicks their head out of the way of a elevator. It was so there was individual moments that I'm really going to remember and are going to stick with me as being really great, but it's just the overarching story that didn't really work. And I thought to myself, okay, is this just me? And we talked to a couple of different groups of people who came out of the same screening that we did. And sometimes I ask people, what did you think? And they politely say, it was fine. people didn't have that reaction.
Well, they didn't say it was bad. They simply said that they also found it confusing.
No,
so
one guy said it was horrible.
Okay, well.
But I don't
think it was horrible. I don't think that's fair.
No, but I think there was a level of disappointment of everyone because the hype was so big.
Right, okay.
And everyone who was in our screening had paid double a normal ticket price to see this film. And so they didn't feel it was worth it. Regular ticket price? Yeah, I would say it's worth going to see, especially for all of these action sequences. The songs were fun. They kind of broke up the action, but they were fine.
There was one song sequence that seemed to sort of naturally flow a bit from what was going on in the plot, and the others seemed to be totally just thrown in there. Now, there is a plot reference later that I don't want to get into that sort of explains sort of the origin for those, but it seemed a forced plot point to try to
they're bops. I mean, I enjoy
it.
the songs. Jacqueline Fernandez has a fun little item number song. That was the one with the tank that runs over the cars, as every item number needs. You need a tank to run over some cars. The production design was really next level in some of the scenes. There was some kind of really stunning apartments or office spaces or whatever that looked different than anything I've seen on screen, even in a Hollywood film. Right. So I would say money spent and things like that. Costuming was really pretty good as well. So there's a lot of positives, a lot of individual elements, but it comes back down to, for me, it's a script and just being guided by a director that, I don't know, I mean, he did a great job with those action sequences, but it's that overarching story that was kind of lacking for me.
I suspect this may be the kind of movie, with a runtime of 3 hours.
Yeah.
I think if the runtime was a little under 2 hours, and I realize that would cut out a bunch of action scenes, but I think that would actually make it a tighter movie.
Yeah.
I think in a sense, to fill it out to a full 3 hours, the plot just gets so convoluted. You have so many twists.
So many twists.
And when the first twist occurred fairly early in the movie, my first reaction was, well, this is awfully early to have the twist. And the answer was there were 11 more twists to come. And so I'm probably exaggerating by one or two. But there were so many that it became like, okay, when's the next twist?
Yeah.
You almost were sort of waiting for it as opposed to being surprised by it. And I think if the movie were shorter, there wouldn't have been the opportunity to do so many of those twists, and so by definition they would have had more impact. By the time you get to the fourth or fifth time, when somebody that you thought was on one side was actually on the other side, but was actually on the first side in the first place, it loses the impact. You don't have the same sense of surprise. Now, there is a twist at the end that I had sort of seen coming,
and
but I'm not sure everybody else would.
Yeah, I don't know that I necessarily saw it, but then, of course, it made a lot of the stuff make sense, but boy, it takes a long time to get to that moment.
It made some things make sense, but
some other things still were left. There's one character that Murali Sharma plays that we're still like, at the end, we're like, well, what happened to him? And I was telling Mark about how Vanilla Kishore is a comedy character actor that I really enjoy in so many films. Van Manadu was so great. And they give him some moments in the first half, but they really don't. He's really not given. They're trying to inject some humor, and it fell flat, which normally for Vanilla Kishore, that was surprising. Not his fault. Again, it was what he was given. Yeah. Even the situation, it was kind of like, it was ridiculous, not in a funny way, ridiculous in a kind of way.
And most of those were in the early part of the movie, and then the movie really changed tone pretty substantially. But there was nothing then leavening it. You'd still think that there'd be still something that would pop up occasionally.
It's just Prabhas saying it's showtime. That's like the moment, I guess, of levity, but it wasn't really. In the second half.
But he said that like 4 times. I think.
I know.
There were a lot of showtimes.
It was always showtime for him.
It was.
So the version that we saw was Telugu, and I could definitely tell that there were actors that maybe had been dubbed who had spoken in Hindi. In the Hindi version, I think Prabhas speaks the Hindi himself, but then maybe the Telugu characters are being dubbed with I don't know, you know, how they worked it all out, but they were doing this release in multiple languages today: Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, and Malayalam. So they were doing all of the major languages. All right, so bottom line, worth seeing.
Yeah.
Worth seeing for an average ticket price. Maybe not worth it for the inflated IMAX price, but...
And if you're at a place where you get to see it where they actually have the intermission, that would be a good thing. It'd be nice to be able
I
to
warned him. It was a
break.
3-hour movie. Guys were leaving during the songs because... Yeah.
I didn't. I stayed the whole time.
You did stay the whole time. So thank you for joining me for this very special review. I hope we kept it spoiler free. So I'm anxious to know your thoughts when you see the film. Please leave a comment and let me know if you were also kind of disappointed, if you were also kind of confused, because
and maybe we just didn't get it. I don't know.
I don't know. I think it was a swing for the rafters and a miss a little bit on this one. Anyway, I'm still a fan of Prabhas, and I will be there first day, first show for his next movie as well. All right, follow me on Twitter at PardesiYT. Subscribe here to Pardesi Reviews, and if you click the bell when you do, then you'll get a notification and never miss another film review or trailer reaction. Although I cannot promise that Mark will join me again. This was major arm twisting, so thank you, honey. Thank you, honey.
Bye.